From Software is doing something very experimental in its latest spin-off game, Elden Ring Nightreign. Set up as an online cooperative experience where you and 2 other friends team up to take on a gauntlet of FromSoft's toughest bosses. It's a blend of genres that is bizarre, but also refreshing. I got a chance to play this thing during its network beta test, and boy do I have some thoughts. Welcome to Good Games Dude. My name is Jay, and I'm here with my first impressions of Elden Ring Nightreign. Unfortunately, I couldn't record any new footage because that feature was disabled for this test. But I do hope you stick around as I have quite a few thoughts and questions I hope you'll find interesting as well. And I'll start off by saying that this is very different from what I was expecting, and that's a good thing. It's very much so a meshing of genres, taking inspiration from battle royales, roguelites, and even MMOs. But it nonetheless feels like a fresh and unique spin on all these, while still inherently feeling like a Soulsborne game. It appears that there's a bigger emphasis here on fast-paced action gameplay, with an arcade-like style where players pick a character and jump straight into combat. That's a good thing because the combat is where this game excels. The network test that was made available was a small, about an hour-long section of the game which was able to provide players a good sense of what to expect. But it does leave me with quite a few questions, mainly surrounding just how much of a game there will be upon release.
Seekers of Redemption, you were chosen.
In the demo, I got to experience essentially 3 sections of the game that are broken into day and night cycles. It eventually culminates into this final boss on the final day, which I'll get to in a moment. At the start of each session, players will pick a character that will fulfill a certain role on the team. In this test, there were 4 characters made available. You had Guardian, a very offensive, winged bird type of character. There was Duchess, who plays more of a support, stealthy and evasive type of role. Wilder, who serves as the basic warrior that is typical in most Soulsborne games. And then there was Recluse, the magic dealer that I played as, who was absolutely broken. I normally don't play as magic users in Soulsborne games because, like many of you, I like to run up and get involved in the action. But man, Recluse is extremely powerful as she can hang back, cast magic from the back, and just go to town. Call it scrubby, unskillful, or I don't know, whatever you'd like to say about it. But what mattered to me was that I carried my team to the end, and that's all that matters. Once you've got your party set up, the game will drop you into the map, and it's up to you and your party to run around, kill enemies, pick up gear, level up, and get ready for the boss at the end of each day. Come nightfall, as the Ring of Fire slowly draws you into a certain location on the map, a boss will meet you there, whom you'll have to confront. These bosses at first seem relatively easy, but don't get too cocky because these are just the mini-bosses. The real challenge was on the 3rd day, where my party and I were transferred to a different location, reminiscent of the beach where players fought Radahn in the main game. And it's here that the big boss was revealed. Typical of Soulsborne bosses, this boss was much more challenging, taking my party members down in 1 or 2 hits, and required all 3 of us coordinating our attacks and reviving one another to win. And as expected from these games, defeating this boss is just as satisfying as ever, as players work together and reap big rewards that make it all worth it. One thing that did surprise me in my time with this game was how fun it was to just run around, collect different weapons and items, and test them all out. Elden Ring was already a game full of different weapons, gear, and items that made for a plethora of different playstyles and abilities. And here, players not only have to make use of whatever weapons and items are given, but this also gives them a chance to play around and experiment with different builds they wouldn't normally have tried out to begin with. Not to mention too that leveling up characters is also streamlined. When players approach save points, they don't have to think about what attribute they want to level up, like health or stamina, but rather the game just levels up characters from one level to the next, allowing for a balanced, simplified way of playing the game that allows people to focus more on gear and weapons. But the real surprise of the demo was just how fun these characters are. Like I said, Recluse was a character that I really enjoyed the most because she could just hang back and cast magic. But that's oversimplifying it a bit because she does run on the third stamina bar, which the game calls focus points or FP. You need to have enough FP to cast magic. So how do you get FP? Well, one of her two abilities allows her to draw focus points out of enemies. So players can't just simply hang back and cast spells. They do have to run up and look for enemies that have focus points that they can collect. But on top of that, this ability is also able to harness different elements from enemies, like fire, ice, and holy. Recluse can then combine these elements into a giant spell bomb that players can unleash after collecting 3 elements. It provided a very gratifying loop of collecting magic, casting spells, and then occasionally throwing out spell bombs that dealt a good chunk of damage. My question is, however, can FromSoft carry the same level of fun and creativity to all of its characters? Recluse felt the most overpowered and fun to play, but I gotta say the other 3 really didn't feel all that effective at all. Duchess's abilities felt relatively weak, as their abilities make her able to cast shadows that distract enemies and also do damage, and also turn the party invisible. Problem is, the shadows didn't feel like they were doing much, and turning invisible didn't matter against enemies that would sweep the area with wide-ranging moves. And the main knight character, Wilder, does receive a grappling hook, but again, it felt pretty useless. You could use it to draw yourself in quickly to an enemy, but it doesn't do any damage either. And his other ability, where you can explode a giant bomb from his wrist, had very short range, also rendering it practically unusable. Other characters are coming that we didn't get our hands on, including a previously mentioned ranged archer, and a character from the trailers who looks like they have a sword-based parry. So I am looking forward to playing these other characters, and maybe there will be more in the future. But I think much of this game's success is going to rely heavily on the variety of characters and how fun they are. The other big question I have is, how many more maps, bosses, and overall content will there be at launch? The game is priced at $40 US, giving a good indication of just how much content there might just be. And the map that was made playable for the network test felt relatively small. Compared to the overwhelmingly large map in Elden Ring, this map felt extremely constrained, while my party and I would be rummaging through the same areas without even realizing it. I really hope there will be a large variety of environments, like poisonous swamps and city areas, because the typical vegetated forest of Elden Ring had already gotten boring. So long as there are multiple maps and bosses, and if the order of events gets constantly shuffled, I think Elden Ring Nightreign could be an extremely fun multiplayer experience players will want to keep coming back to. There's a lot of potential here, with the possibility of new content and events to be added continuously for years down the road, and even more characters. But it won't be long till we find out if it all comes together, as the game releases on May 30th.
Band together and prepare to claim the life of the Night Lord.
For more on the Soulsborne genre, check out my video on why Bloodborne is a gaming essential, and subscribe for more on the best that video games have to offer.